Let's get to Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk. Check out his new book, Father of Mine, available on Amazon. We all have it, and I'm showing it in the YouTube channel right now. Really good book. On the back here, it's 1973. The mob is everywhere. The mob rules the cities. It also controls small towns like Wheeling, West Virginia, where it runs rampant, unchecked, and unlimited. And, of course, that's where Mike Florio grew up in, and his father was involved in some things here. Very interesting book. Tells us the insight about Mike Florio growing up basically with the mob here. Mike, let's talk football here. We'll talk about your book in a second, but free agency, the legal tampering period, all that stuff is going on. We're seeing all these moves made here. And the big move for the 49ers so far is Eric Armstead refusing to restructure his deal. The Niners are going to part ways with their longest tenure member on the defensive line, and it feels like that's just the beginning of a reshuffle for the 49ers, Mike.
Well, this is how it works when you get into the later years of a player's contract. This is why players want guaranteed money. If contracts were fully guaranteed, they would be truly bilateral in that the players are committed for the full term of the deal and the team is committed for the full term of the deal. We get beyond the guaranteed years of a contract, the player is stuck, the team isn't. If the player outperforms, the team doesn't have to do anything. If the player underperforms, the team tears it up or goes to the player and says,
oh, we get Mike Florio back on. I think he accidentally hung up there. Here's another one. ESPN's Jeremy Fowler, Shasky. I think you're going to perk up with this one. Jeremy Fowler lists the 49ers as a team to watch for Levante David, linebacker coming from Tampa Bay.
I think linebacker is the most undervalued spot on the just in the NFL and as a whole.
Right.
When I look at teams winning it all, Kansas City, their linebacker play was dramatically underrated. Yeah. Nick Bolton was a monster just all year. I had him in fantasy as a defensive player, and he was killing it for me, even though he had an ankle injury. And I look at the teams that are at the top of the list, and all the good ones, I have great linebacker play.
Yeah. All right, Florio, go ahead, finish up, man. We lost you there for a second.
Well, I don't know how far I got. I mean, my bottom line is, because this was one of those monologues where you put it out there, and it's like, boy, that sounds really good. Hey, what the hell happened to the call? So I don't know when it ended. Teams have the power to do this. They can go to the player and squeeze them because the contracts aren't fully guaranteed. So they want Armstead to take a big pay cut. He says no, thank you, and now he's going to be cut. Now, hopefully for his sake, his agent gauged the market to see whether whatever the 49ers offered compares favorably to whatever else might be out there, because once he gets cut, you see. If the 49ers are willing to pay him 10, and I'm just throwing out a number, and nobody else is willing to do more than 10, then you
What is going on? What is going on?
You have to laugh at this point.
No. So here's another thing. Mama Bosa is Instagram DMing. Oh my God, do it for Mama. And there's a lot of screenshots and a lot of photoshops of Joey Bosa in the Niner uniform. So Shara Bosa, the mother of Nick and Joey Bosa, is reposting all this on her Instagram, saying, please do it for Mama. She wants Joey with the 49ers.
That's all this morning or over the last?
Just on her story over the last 24 hours.
Huh. Interesting. Maybe we can get Florio back on. I don't know what's going on back there. But, wow. Cheryl Bosa saying Joey's coming. I will take Joey. If it makes Nick better, let's do it.
Yeah, I want to know maybe we ask Mike what's going on. So she also has, the league would be very scared if this happens. And this Joey Bosa, this Nick Bosa, although Joey's wearing number 98, that's the number of Javon Hargrave.
So?
So I'm just saying.
Didn't he start with number 99 in San Diego?
I thought he did.
And then he switched to 97, which is his dad's number in Miami.
So they were all at UFC down in Miami. The Bosas and everything. All right, Mike Florio's back. Let's move on. But Mike, let's ask you this. Joey Bosa. I'm seeing his mom post a lot on Instagram, and obviously Joey Bosa looks like him and the Chargers are in line for a divorce here. Are you hearing about Joey Bosa maybe reuniting with his brother, playing together here in San Francisco, here in the Bay Area?
I haven't heard that part of it, but on the front end, look, you've got new coach in Jim Harbaugh, you've got new GM in Joe Ortiz, and you've got a lot of star players who haven't done anything collectively. And it's not an indictment of them individually. I think it makes sense for the Chargers' new brass to come in and say, we're always failing to live up to what we should be. Let's trim some fat. Let's move on from some of these guys. And even if we can't trade them and decide to keep them, we fired a shot across the bow that we expect something different than what we've been getting collectively from this team. So I think Bosa is potentially in danger. I think between Bosa and Mack, one of them is going to be gone. And between Mike Williams and Keenan Allen, one of them is going to be gone. And if they can't trade them, one of them is going to be cut, I think. But, Bosa has been injured a lot in recent years, and I think that's really the question. Do you live up to that big salary if you're not available to play? And it's not his fault. It's a demanding sport, and guys get injured. But when you do get injured, it's hard to justify the big salary moving forward.
Do you know Joey Bosa at all? We don't know a lot about him. Like, I know there was frustrations about him standing up and then he wanted to be in the dirt or whatever, but we've got Brandon Staley in San Francisco now, so I don't know if he just doesn't like Brandon Staley. Like, I don't know enough about Joey Bosa to know, is this a good acquisition if he were to be released and teamed up with his brother?
I mean, I've interviewed him a couple of times. That's the extent of it. I don't think he's going to feel compelled to play with his brother. I think he and his brother both think very strategically, independently. Joey Bosa had a long holdout when he was drafted by the Chargers. He wanted certain things in his contract the Chargers didn't want to give, and he stayed away until he got what he wanted. And I always respect that when players push back against what the teams are trying to tell him to do. He got his second contract without a whole lot of hassle after 3 years in the NFL. And, he's a great pass rusher when he's healthy. The question becomes, do you target a team that's got cap space, that can afford to pay you? Do you have other connections out there of people you've been with in the past who you want to be with again? You mentioned Brandon Staley, and we always just assume, oh, hey, there's a connection there. Well, sometimes the connection is, I never want to work with that guy again. We just don't know. But, you can't rule out anything at this point. And once he's cut, if he is cut, and I don't think there's going to be a trade market. There's a roster bonus that's due like on the third day of the league year. So if there isn't a trade market or a revised contract as part of a trade, then he's available, and, we see where he lands. He can go anywhere he wants, but he got drafted by the Chargers. He got drafted in California where the tax rate, as you guys know, at the high end is 13.3%. And I could see Joey Bosa factoring that in because he seems to be very business savvy when it comes to making his next move.
How do you view the Javon Hargrave contract 1 year in? Because I've seen a lot of fans saying we should move off him as well.
Well, I'd have to pull it up and look at the numbers to see what the cap charge would be, what the cash charge would be for moving on from Hargrave after 1 year. They decided to splurge last year, and I think they knew where this ball was moving with Eric Armstead, that, by the end of the contract, maybe they would decide to move on. But they splurged, and those contracts, and that's why so much of the numbers we're going to see this week as the agents text them out to the reporters and the reporters engage in a thumb race to X to get them out there. All that matters is what's fully guaranteed at signing. Everything beyond that is fake because the team can say, we're out. Look at Russell Wilson, prime example. Once they got past the fully guaranteed money, and once they were up against a deadline for injury guarantees to become full guarantees later this week, the Broncos decided to just bite the bullet and move on. So it all comes down to what the structure of that deal is, whether or not the 49ers believe they're getting a good return, whether they think they're going to get a good return next year. It's not just what have you done for me lately, it's what can I expect you to do for me tomorrow. What do they expect from Hargrave next year? What's the cap charge? What are our alternatives? It's a very complicated analytical process that comes down ultimately to an up or down decision on whether a guy stays.
Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk, here on the Morning Rush on 95.7 The Game. Mike, Deebo Samuel is going to get $28 million in base salary this year. That accounts for nearly 10% of the salary cap. They also have a decision to make on Brandon Aiyuk because we all doubt that Brandon Aiyuk is going to play on that fifth-year option without a new deal. So what do you think happens here with Brandon Aiyuk? Do you believe that he'll be in San Francisco or in the Bay Area on day one of training camp next season?
Well, when this all came up a couple of weeks ago, I looked at the cap numbers this year for some of the key players on offense. George Kittle has a high cap number. Deebo Samuel, as you mentioned, has a high cap number. Brock Purdy still has a low cap number for one more year because he was the last guy drafted in 2022. This is the year that I think they hope to hold it all together and keep Brandon Aiyuk at his fifth-year option and then deal with it next year when they would move on from Kittle or Samuel or both potentially, or do what they're doing with Eric Armstead and say, we want you to take less or else. They might still do that with Kittle. I saw a report that they're doing it with Kyle Juszczyk. So I think they would like to hold the offense together for one more year if they can before they pay Brandon Aiyuk. But, from Aiyuk's perspective, how many years do I have to put in before I get my reward? And even though he wasn't taken in the top 10 of the draft, when the NFL reconfigured the way they pay rookies in 2011 in order to avoid the Ryan Leafs, the Jamarcus Russells, the guys who get the big contracts and don't live up to them, the idea was for the guys who got drafted and didn't get a big contract, if you play well, you're going to get rewarded. You shouldn't have to wait 5 years. Yeah, I mentioned Joey Bosa. He got his after 3 years. Brandon Aiyuk has every right to say, what more do I have to do to get my long-term contract? And, it's very tempting for the team to ignore that and just say, hey, we have your contractual rights for 1 more year. There's nothing you can do about it, and then we'll decide what to do next year. So I think they'd like to hold it all together for 1 more year when you look at the various cap numbers, and then next year when they have to worry about Purdy, when they have to deal with Aiyuk, when they have to make a hard decision about Kittle and Samuel, that's when I think they'd like to handle paying Aiyuk then.
You referenced Purdy's contract. We know that he can't be paid because of the rules of the NFL, because he was drafted where he was, and the money won't kick in for a couple of years. What do you think he's worth? What do you think that their starting point is for someone like Brock Purdy?
Well, that's a great question because we've evolved past, I think, an age where the next guy whose contract comes up becomes the next highest paid quarterback in league history. We went through a stretch starting with Jimmy Garoppolo in 2018. He goes to 27.5. It's like hands working up a baseball bat. You know how you turn the baseball bat upside down, you do the hands up until you see whose thumb's at the top. And you go Jimmy Garoppolo, and then you go Kirk Cousins to 28, and then you go Matthew Stafford to 28.5, and then you go Matt Ryan to 30, and it just keeps moving up and up and up. At some point, tiers need to develop. So what tier will Brock Purdy be on? Will he be on the top tier, 55, 60 million a year? Will he be on a lower tier? Whatever Kirk Cousins carves out, is that where he'll be? It's going to be complicated, but, the reality is the 49ers will have 1 more year under contract with him and the ability to franchise tag him twice before he could walk away. And that's part of figuring out value. And we'll see. I mean, the last time they had a great young quarterback in Colin Kaepernick, they paid him. They gave him a big contract. It wasn't as big as his camp tried to make it out to be. But when they have a guy who's getting it done, they know that there's a time where you have to pay him.
If it was up to you and you had to pay him now, knowing that you can't legally, but if you had to, what's the number that you're comfortable at per year right now?
If he was eligible right now and I had to pay him right now, I mean, somewhere between 35 and 40, I think, with incentives.
Yeah.
But look, we hear that and we say, wow. But remember this, salary cap's $255 million per year now.
No doubt.
And the players and the owners split the money roughly right down the middle. So that 255.4 that's going to your player labor costs, you got another 255.4 to deal with. And the owners have all the equity. So, I always try to get folks to realize it's tempting to resent the players because they're making too much money. Well, add zeros, and that's what the owners are doing. And they're not the ones out there getting beat up and suffering CTE potentially and only have a handful of years to do it, and they own the teams.
Right. Mike, real quick, I'm going to circle back to Deebo for a second because I was asking Shasky here during the break. Have the 49ers got the best out of Deebo Samuel? Have we seen the best of Deebo Samuel? Now, he had a very good year. Now, he has some injuries, but I can't unsee the Super Bowl. You were there at the Legion Stadium where he couldn't gain separation later on. He hurts his hamstring. Because when it comes to Aiyuk, I'm looking at Deebo, $28 million. Wow, that's a lot of money for what he is. And we know he's not a pure wide receiver. He's a playmaker, and I'm not mad at that. He makes plays all over the football field, and they're better with him. But I just wonder if we've seen the best of Deebo Samuel, Mike.
Well, and this is the challenge. Anytime you have a great player who wants to be paid, are you paying for what he's already done, or are you paying for what is still to come? And what's your projection, right? It's not what have you done for me lately. It's what can I expect you to do for me today and tomorrow and the next day. That's what you're paying for. And if we look at it that way, have they really gotten high-end value? Hey, and I don't criticize Deebo Samuel for leveraging his situation to get paid. It's up to the player to get paid. It's up to the team to manage the salary cap. But, I think a fair argument could be made that Deebo Samuel has not delivered the full return that maybe they were expecting. And I'll tell you what, something to put on the radar screen. I don't know that this is going to happen, but at some point, I think it's fair for Christian McCaffrey to say, hey, I think it's time to look at my contract here, because how many great years does he have left? This may be the time for him to rattle the cage a little bit and try to get more money.
Wow. This will be the offseason to do that. Wow.
Can I ask you about Nick Sorensen? Because we don't know anything about him. Do you know anything about Nick Sorensen? And then
we have no clue.
Let me follow that up with, and I'm doing a double team here. Brandon Staley hire. What were your thoughts on both of those?
Well, what I know about Nick Sorensen is I remember when he played in the NFL and they called him Sunshine because he had the same haircut as the guy who was Sunshine and Remember the Titans. And when I saw a picture of Nick Sorensen recently, I mean, the guy cut his hair and it's gone, and it's like two different human beings. But you get into coaching, you go corporate, you got to get a haircut, you got to act the part. Can't have long hair your whole life. So, he's been around a long time as a coach. He knows that Seattle defense, and I think what they did, because I had heard initially Brandon Staley was the guy to watch to be the defensive coordinator, but he's not the Seattle cover 3 guy. Sorensen is. So you get the best of both worlds. You get somebody who knows the system, and you get somebody who's done well enough as a defensive coordinator to become a head coach, and you see what happens. And if it doesn't work, Robert Saleh might be available next year, and he could come back and do the job that he used to do.
Wow. Good stuff here from Mike Florio, man. We always appreciate the time with you. I know you're going to be a busy man. Don't be like those other guys twiddling thumbs. That was a great little monologue on a Pat McAfee show about all these insiders running to Twitter or X, whatever it is.
I mean, it's true.
You're so right, though. You're so right.
What bothers me is, and I don't care that that's how it happens, although it is laughable at times, because you will literally see the text from the agents copied and pasted by the reporters into X, because you got to win the Twitter race, the thumb race to get there. The idea that bullcrap numbers get put out there and the reporters know it and they still pass it along because they'd rather have half the truth than none of the truth, that's what bothers me. And we're committed to trying to get the full numbers on all these big deals so people can really see what they're worth, so the fans know what the commitment is, and so we all know who ranks where as it relates to how these players are valued by their teams.
Well, you brought up long-haired people, and now I'm trying to think of a successful musician, non-actor with long hair. You're kind of on point with that. I can't think of anybody in any prominent role with long hair, like how Sorensen had to cut his hair. Like, I can't come up with anyone.
Yeah, it reminded me of Trevor Lawrence, because I've wondered at what age he's too old to have that long hair that hangs out from under his helmet. Like, is it 30? I don't know, but it is. I think it's a job factor, and I think it's an age factor. I mean, it's kind of hard to pull it off unless you're in a rock band. It's hard to pull it off past 30.
I got a real quick one. This one just popped up on me because I think I saw you tweeting about this, Mike, but the whole owner grades or organizational grades, and the Chiefs had got a low grade, which surprised me.
They won back-to-back
Super Bowls. It feels like they won back-to-back Super Bowls. They won 3 or 5 years. They've paid Mahomes. They have a great fan base. I was surprised to see the Chiefs graded so low in that poll there, Mike. I was blown away by that. The Hunts, really? Cheap?
Well, when you've got a great coach and you've got a great quarterback, that covers up a lot of things. And look, Andy Reid's making $12 million a year, which is insulting, frankly. He should be making twice that. And maybe one of the reasons why the Chiefs were preparing for the possibility of Reid retiring is Reid, you look at, I'm doing this for $12 million a year. No, thank you. He really should be making twice as much. And I think part of it is, and we've seen comments about this sense that there are promises made that aren't kept. That's what gets an owner low marks. But I think it does resonate. Look, when you see those grades, you can either take it seriously or you can try to dismiss it and downplay it. And I think, especially as it relates to the Chris Jones deal, Clark Hunt took it seriously. And when Chris Jones tweets A+ for Clark Hunt, it's funny, but it also shows that those grades have
power. The NFLPA has found something here. It's a way to hold people who aren't accountable. Just like Jed York said when the 49ers were going through the Jim Tom Sula, Chip Kelly years, you can't fire the owner. You can't. But you can put a grade on him. You can put a Bart Simpson F- on him and embarrass him and shame him into doing his job better.
I like that. I like that a lot. Mike, continue the great work, man. Michael Pittman Jr. just signed for 3 years, $71.5 million, $46 million guarantee. So what does that mean for Brandon Aiyuk, who was in the same draft class as Michael Pittman Jr.? Thanks for the time as always, Mike. Take care.
All right, see you guys.
Anytime. Mike Florio, Pro Football Talk. Check out his new book, Father of Mine, available on Amazon. We should have needled him and said, hey, we bought your book. You see us on the books here, Mike. We purchased it.